So what hurt the most in all this entire experience?
What hurt the most was wondering what was going to happen if it became public. That what happened years before with the kids, wondering how they take it. Because our family's really close. We travel together a lot, and that was probably the worst part. Because once it all happened, it's like, okay, the worst that could happen has happened, and it's not so bad.
What an exceptionally interesting guest we have today, Mr. Jerry Falwell Jr. He and his wife have been through the ringer over the past number of years, and if there's any place for him to come tell his story, it's our show Erased, which is the place for people to come on and share their emotional journeys of cancellation. Thank you for joining us, Jerry. It's great to meet you. Thank you for coming on.
Honored to be with you. Honored to be with you, David and Layla.
Terrific. So one thing that crosses my mind is what it must be like to grow up as the son of Jerry Falwell Sr., a extraordinarily well-known global person of interest. What's it like to grow up in his shadow and try to fill his shoes?
It was good in some ways and very stressful in other ways. I mean, I was always getting teased by other kids because my dad was a preacher, and just they all assumed I would be someday, and I wanted to be a lawyer. I always did. I went to University of Virginia Law School later and start practicing in '87. But yeah, it was sort of like living in a glass house. It was, and there were so many. I don't know how much you know about Baptists in general, but there are a lot of rules associated with being Baptist that not necessarily sins that are listed in the Bible, but they're just things that are considered bad. And so we had to grow up just with looking over our shoulders all the time because we were the preacher's kids. And so certain things, we knew that certain things we did, we'd have a lot higher price to pay than others. So it was kind of nerve-wracking, to be honest with you.
And you have a brother who's a pastor, right?
My younger brother, my father founded the organization. He started a church, and then he started a became a national television program. He started the church in '56, and it was known as the Old Time Gospel Hour. And back in those days, there were only 3 stations to watch: ABC, NBC, CBS, some places PBS. But on Sunday morning, you had 3 choices, and so 1/3 of the population, or almost that much, almost 1/3 of the people watching TV were watching his program. So it became extremely well known, and he was one of the pioneers in religious broadcasting. And somewhere along the way, he decided to start a college. And he, when he announced it in 1970, I was 8 years old. I'd heard him talking about it before that, and gone to visit different campuses across the country with him to get ideas. But he didn't want to start just a typical Christian college. He wanted Liberty to be different, and so from every other Christian college. Most of them are smaller. They have limited sports program, limited academic programs. But he would always say, why can't there be a college that's the equivalent of Notre Dame? World-class facilities, world-class athletics, academics, beautiful, incredible world-class campus, just beautiful in every way, financially strong. Why can't we have that for evangelical Christian young people? Nobody's ever done it, had never done it. And so that was his dream, but he never got to see it come to fruition. He spent a lot of years working so hard. I traveled with him growing up all over the country. We'd be in arenas we'd have college students with us who would do musical performances, patriotic performances to get the word out to the country about the new college. And we'd be in arenas, in the arena next door that might be Led Zeppelin or some other. I was traveling around in buses and on old World War II airplanes with my dad. I was sort of the teenager that hung around with all the college kids. And I grew up like, it was almost like being part of a rock band. just on the road constantly with roadies and bunch of college kids. And so I early on adopted that vision for Liberty University and decided to make it happen once I got the chance.
So you, at what point did you get involved with the university? It's my understanding you were involved as sort of like a trustee or on the board or of some sorts.
Well, I was I was a practicing attorney, and I also was a real estate developer. And so I was also attorney for my father's, it was called Old Time Gospel Hour, big ministry, and starting in 1988. And I became general counsel to the university later. And the university back in those days was in, I mean, you started a school from scratch. You know how challenging it is, Layla.
Yes.
Starting a college from scratch in Lynchburg, Virginia with no money. I mean, that's pretty much what he did. He raised a lot of money on TV through his television program with direct mail and with television advertising. But by the time he paid the airtime on all the stations all over the country, paid for the printing, postage to raise the money, but it brought a lot of money in, but you see, he spent more than that just about every year. So the organization was, because it had so much revenue, it was able to borrow money, but not really pay the debt off. So the debt was building. And finally, about the time that I went to work over there, 1988, the debts were up around $110 million. And there was just no conceivable way out. So my job for years was to work with creditors who wanted to foreclose, who wanted to get their money no matter, there were probably 100 of them. And it was my job to keep them all at bay and to find the money on the weekends from donors or from lenders to make payroll that was coming up Monday. And we had like thousands of employees. And so I went from sort of stressful growing up being a famous preacher's kid to being under incredible stress. And nobody really knew how tight things were financially for the organization, except my father and me, because he wanted to keep a positive face on everything. And so I was the one sitting in the back office sweating and trying to find a way to keep this place on the rails and trying to convince him to stop spending, trying to raise money, because it ended up losing money when he tried. And so finally he started to listen towards the end of his life. And what happened after he passed is just it's history in itself. I mean, he passed in 2007, and I started working towards building that university that he talked about. And one of the first things I did was make sure that no money went from the university to subsidize any of the Old Time Gospel Hour, the fundraising organization, the religious side. And that in itself is all the school really needed. And we started to grow. And, we went from pretty much zero assets. Our debt we had about 20 million in debt. It was paid off by my father's life insurance when he passed. But we went from pretty much zero in the bank to, when I left in 2020, it was about $2.5 billion in cash and investments, and had built billions. I spent about, I'd say, $1.5 billion to $2 billion. And on top of that, rebuilding the campus almost from scratch, and you got to come see it sometime. It's just an incredible campus, and
I'd love to see it. Actually, I really would. I'd like to take you up on that.
I'd like to know about the online program.
I'd love to give you the tour. And you mentioned the online. Is that what you just said?
Yeah, 90,000.
No,
Yeah,
it's 100,000. I think
it's
more than
funny how that
100,000,
started.
right?
It's funny how that started. It was 1976. My father, on his television program, decided to sell a Bible course. It took about a year to complete. It cost $1,000, and it was not accredited or anything, but it's how we sort of learned how to do distance education. So by the time the college started an online education program in 1985, it wasn't online then, it was just distance learning, but we were way ahead of most universities and most organizations. And so we worked on it. It really didn't take off until 2005, when people started getting high-speed internet in their homes. And then it made it possible for so many people who otherwise couldn't go to college to get their education or their master's degree or finish college. And it turned out to be a huge demand for that. We were the first ones in, so just being first was a big part of making the online program so successful. And also, the online program generated revenue that allowed us to build a campus into major world-class university. But we also moved up to the highest level of NCAA competition in football. We were moved up to, it's called Football Bowl Subdivision. And we, it's hard to get in FBS. It's called FBS. But we fought hard, and we convinced the NCAA years ago to let us in, probably 7 years ago. And since then, we've won most of the bowl games we played. And we've beaten schools like Baylor and BYU and all the schools that my father wanted Liberty to be like someday. And so we're there, and it's sort of regretful. I'm not sure a lot of people understand what that vision for the university really, what it really meant. I think a lot of people there now, because it's never been done before, they think was meant to be just another typical Christian college. And I'm just all the time trying to educate them on what the real goal was for the place, because I hate to put in all that work my whole life and then see it go another direction. So that's where we are. That's where we are now. That's sort of the background to get up to what we're going to talk about today.
Now, is it going in another direction? Because I remember learning online that there's super strict rules, no alcohol, no holding hands. Is all that changing now, or? My
father changed a lot of that when he was there. In fact, that atmosphere really didn't exist anymore by the time I became president. It was more open, because that's what he wanted. He wanted it to be an enjoyable experience for young people. But when it first started out, it pretty much had to be like every other Christian college to attract students, because we didn't have a nice campus or a wonderful athletic program, or really any other way to get them here. And so that's what we did. And so it's just exciting to see that the school is there, but there's just so many people that never believed it could be done, that a Christian university, evangelical Christian university, could become a world-class university. I think they heard my dad say it 100 times, 1,000 times, but I don't think they really believed it was possible. And I'm not sure a lot of them understand what it means right now. So that's my role now, is to try to educate people that are there now and people that are outside, alumni, on what the school was meant to be, because what happened in 2020 just kind of confused everybody and threw us off track.
So let's talk about that. Of course, we're no newbies to scandals, and I was watching one of your interviews, and you were talking about how you felt a lot of this heat came from you supporting President Trump. Mm-hmm. We definitely had something similar when we were very vocal about Trump. They really, really tried to squash us. Our situation is a little different than yours, but no matter what, everybody has a story to tell, and they have their side of the story. And you just, what we've learned about the media is you can't believe anything that they say. I mean, they're so good at drumming up drama and manipulating the situation and only sharing the side that they want you to hear. And they're really good at just, if they want to bash somebody, that person's going to be bashed. And so a race is all about letting the other person talk. We want to hear what you have to say. We want to go back to, the beginning of it. Share the journey with us.
Well, between 2007 and 2020, like I said, we took the school from, I told you what we did financially. And then we also, like I said, built the campus, and all those things where everybody was just stunned, because Liberty was so destitute, so on the edge of just going out of business for so many years. The fact that Liberty University was suddenly prospering just blew a lot of people's minds. I mean, faculty members, students, nobody could believe what was happening. And but there were some people who were jealous and who hated Donald Trump. And I did take a stand for Donald Trump because of the reason that I explained in the Washington Post was that the country was in $20 trillion of debt at that time. To me, that sounded like an impossible number. Now it's over 30. So I don't know what that means. But I thought, well, if Liberty could dig out of the hole we were in by just using business principles, just simple business principles, and run it like a business, then a businessman could do the same thing for this country. And so that's why I supported Donald Trump. I really didn't know if he was a conservative really on a lot of the issues or not, because all I knew is what everybody knew, is you'd seen him on TV. But it turned out he was the best person by far. And even when he won when the night that John Kasich stepped out of the race and Trump went on TV and announced that he had gotten the nomination, he thanked me for, I was the one he singled out to thank him for getting him the nomination on national TV. And so that blew me away. I had no idea that my involvement had that much impact, but to have somebody who was an evangelical leader, even though I wasn't a pastor or a preacher, to say things like, look, we're not electing a Sunday school teacher. We're electing a president. And so we need somebody who's a savvy businessman, who's built things, who knows what it's like to make a payroll, who will run the country like a business. That's really how we saved Liberty University.
We say that all the time. We say that all the time.
Yeah.
This country needs to be ran like a business.
Right.
You can't give away all this money and just constantly think that somehow you're going to be able to survive. It's business 101. You
Not
know.
to mention a warrior. Unfortunately, the leader of our country needs to be somewhat warrior-like and can't be a little wallflower. They're not compatible.
You have to stand up to China. You got to stand up to Russia, and you can't be a pansy. So we're not.
Right.
We're not voting for a pansy. We're voting for somebody with some big cojones.
I mean, it's that simple to me. And I think Liberty, that's the reason my father wanted me to be the leader of Liberty, because I wasn't a pastor or preacher. And he knew it took somebody with a business background and a legal mind to run. It's really what was really going to become a big business. It is a big business, a huge business. And so, my father's family goes back for generations, all the way back to 1607 in Virginia. And they moved up from the eastern coast to here. And they were all business people. They, unlike New England, the Northeast, they didn't come here to escape religious persecution like so many others did. They came here to make money. Virginia was the first colony and was by far the most prosperous for 200 plus years. So, but anyhow, that's the background my dad came from. And when I was sick a few years ago, I did all the genealogical research, and I didn't find a single reverend in his background anywhere. So for him to become a pastor was as big a shock as for Liberty University to become prosperous, because his family in the 1920s and 30s, his father had many businesses, a lot of gas stations, a nightclub that seated 1,000 people. This was like in the big band area, bands like, I can't think of his name, I want to say Benny Goodman, but that's not it.
Benny Goodman.
Yeah, I think that is, and Tommy Dorsey, those some of those folks. They also had a big hotel there, and had the second motel that was ever built in the United States, right here in Lynchburg. And he also had a passenger bus service that ran from Washington, D.C. to Durham, North Carolina, and just a really big businessman. But he had some tragedies in his life that caused him to lose everything. It was right in the Depression. His 11-year-old daughter, my dad's older sister, died of appendicitis. They were done having kids. They decided to have one more since she had died. That's why my father was born 2 years later. And but the other tragedy that happened that same year, 1931, is his younger brother, my grandfather's younger brother, was very, very wild. He was, known for, hard drinking, and even back in those days, drugs and everything. So he had a big hot rod car he was driving, and he got drunk and mad one night and came in my grandfather's office with a gun to shoot him. My grandfather jumped out the back window, just barely missed being shot. He ended up killing his brother, and that just destroyed him. He started drinking after that. It bothered him so much. And it was self-defense, but he just never got over it. And he died by age 55 from cirrhosis of the liver.
Wow.
It's biblical in itself, this story.
Yeah, it's incredible. And my father would have he was 15 when my grandfather died, so he probably would have gone into the family business, but he had to start from scratch. And that's why it was so difficult to start the church and the university because he really did have to go back and just, like I said, start from scratch and build it up from nothing. And it made for some very difficult, but also some very rewarding years for all of us.
So fast forward a little bit, you endorsed Trump, but prior to that, as early as 2012, allegedly, apparently, you and your wife had a situation with a pool boy at the Fontainebleau Hotel right here.
In 2012, my wife made a mistake a long time ago. I'd forgiven her probably a year later. I don't know exactly, but that was it. That was all there was to the story. Well, it turned out the people who had influence over liberty that didn't like Trump worked with other. I call them the Mitt Romney, George Bush, Liz Cheney wing of the Republican Party. They actually paid this quote pool boy. Well, ABC News in August of 2020 reported that the Lincoln Project provided him with free pro bono legal assistance, and he went public in 2020 with a bunch of lies about. He completely embellished what was a true story. We told that part of the story, and he was paid several $100,000 to go to do a documentary and to do a book. Well, he had no corroboration for the things that he was accusing us of, and because it was Hulu, which is ABC News, and because it was I don't even know who the book publisher was, but it was just a book publisher that was no friend of Trump's. They didn't require any corroboration. They just put it out there. And at the same time, just perfect storm, I had a genetic blood disorder called spherocytosis. I'd had it my whole life, didn't know it. And I didn't know this either, but in your 50s or 60s, it causes you to start getting clots in your lungs. And so I've been healthy my whole life, so that was kind of a strange thing to happen. But I got the blood clots, and my blood oxygen dropped below 80. This was in 2020. And I don't know if you ever had blood oxygen that low, but you can't. Climbing the stairs, you feel like you've been working out at the gym. Taking a shower, you feel like, just walking out to your car in the driveway, you just feel exhausted. And I was like that, and they couldn't figure out what was wrong for 2 years. So when all this news broke, mostly lies, I couldn't defend myself. And the university, I don't know what, I never got a chance to explain it to them, to tell them the truth. And I was just not physically capable of defending myself. So but it took, after about 2 years and 2 procedures, they finally figured out that I had spherocytosis, and they found a blood thinner that actually worked. The ones I'd been trying didn't work. They were oral blood thinners. So they found an injection that does work. So I started taking that in 2022, got back to normal, feeling good again. Obviously, I've been sitting around for 2 years. I gained a lot of weight, so I had to get back in shape, get back in the gym. And so I really wasn't ready to fight until 2023, and I did fight in court. I wasn't able to say much publicly. I heard one of your guests, Roger Stone, talk about how he was gagged. Well, I was gagged too, but not by a judge, by the fact that I was just incapable physically of talking. Plus, my lawyers were saying, there was a lawsuit too, and the lawyers were saying, don't say anything publicly. Don't tell your side of the story for litigation reasons. So I didn't. And so finally in 2023 and 2024, I started telling my side of the story and getting the truth out. And it turned out that millions were spent starting in 2020, many millions, to investigate me. Wow. And the people who were doing it, who were behind it, were people that I'd worked with in the past, but who were angry because I had not let them do business deals that I thought were that were not fair to the university. It was a way for them to make money at the university's expense. And I kept saying, no, we can't do that. We're a nonprofit. It's all about providing education to students, and that money belongs to them. They pay tuition, and it's not our place to spend it on anything else. And so they got mad over the years. I finally got rid of them, but afterwards they went into the press and spoke anonymously. Well, the press is so lacks integrity so badly that they didn't care if nothing they were saying was corroborated. They didn't care if they weren't given their names. They still printed it. And so all of that had been going on for those 4 years. And so it's almost the same time that you guys got, I think it was your problems. I think they came after you in 2020 or around that time.
2020, 2021, 22,
24.
24, yeah.
Well, that's the same time they went after Donald Trump too. So I kind of take a little bit of umbrage in that you know, that we're going after other people who are on our side during those same years. The Department of Education during that time under Biden came in and did a review of Liberty University and Grand Canyon University. And they fined those two universities, which are both Christian universities, more than they've ever fined any school before, including Penn State under Jerry Sandusky with all of his, you've heard of that. Well, they fined Liberty, I think it was 14 or 15 million, and Grand Canyon about the same amount. Penn State paid 1.8 million, and they couldn't find anything at Liberty except some police officers many years ago forgot to report this crime or that crime. There was a few, nothing serious. I mean, really serious. I mean, there were some sexual assaults that, of course, were very serious, but there were very few for a school the size of Liberty, percentage-wise, very, very few compared to most major universities. But you wouldn't know that from hearing, you know, the Department of Education, the press talk about it. And the investigation that they spent millions of dollars on me, that didn't find anything, but that was never announced publicly.
So how did it feel? I mean, what was going through your mind? Because you're obviously, prior to the news break, you're a prestigious man of a, you know, very large university, over 15,000 kids, very famous father.
Yeah.
What was it like seeing yourself on TV?
Yeah, as the story is breaking.
Seeing these accusations, you know, and of course they really go in with a dagger. We know that. I mean, how did you feel? What was going through your mind?
You know, to be accused of financial improprieties after I had grown up as a preacher's kid, and after I'd gone to law school, University of Virginia, one of the top 10 law schools, and learned how important it is to be professional, to operate with integrity. I had seen, my father was famous even when I was young, so I'd seen the press come after him over and over, and so I knew that anything that I did wrong, I mean, I had to be above reproach. I couldn't even have the appearance of anything financially improper happen, and I never did. But it really bothered me to see the people who really wanted to do something illegal financially that I didn't allow, to see them accusing me of the very things that they actually did and wanted to do more of. And you know, that's kind of the way it always works. I think that happened with Donald Trump. I think they accused him of a lot of things that they were guilty of, the other side was guilty of, and it's just I think it's just human nature.
You know, we've been in a situation where as our scandal number one was unfolding, we had a publicist who worked for the school, and she's like, you know, I normally do restaurant openings. I don't do global media crises, so you might want to get yourself some professional help. And she said, because they know it's going to go big, and it did. And so we know what it's like to feel like, all right, something's happening. This is something we've never experienced before. All this energy is coming in our direction. Do you remember that in your situation, the day things started to really unfold, and what that felt like going through that?
Well, you know, the strange thing is I was so sick, and I had no energy, but I didn't know that anything was wrong. And so somebody, I don't know who, concluded that the reason I was lethargic like that, the reason I was unable to fight, was because I was drinking too much alcohol. That was not the case, but I mean, like I said, I could hardly walk up the steps, and so I guess, I mean, I didn't know what I had, so I couldn't tell them.
This is 2020. Just put the date.
2020.
Early 2020, yeah. Something like that.
Right. So when I started hearing all this bad press, I just tuned it out. I didn't. I knew it was bad. I knew it was terrible. All the lies they were telling, and things they were saying, and it looked awful because they'd banned us from campus, and it appeared like Liberty even believed that we had done something wrong. But over the years, the smoke cleared, and when the smoke cleared, There was nothing there. But by then, the damage is done. And that's happened to so many people. I think the reason you see so much cancel culture is because the other side has moved so far to the extremes of, the Bernie Sanders and AOC, that type of thing, all the wokeness. I think they moved so far in that direction that they just they can't argue. Their positions are too unpopular to say them out loud. So the only way they can come after you and attack our side is by canceling us, lying about us, making up terrible things, trying to indict us. I mean, if I had done anything wrong financially, I'd be in jail right now, because they looked under every rock. They came after me, and as far as the world knew, I had done something wrong. They came after me in every way, and I believe that their intention was to try to put me in jail. They didn't want anybody to ever support anybody affiliated with Liberty University to ever publicly support Donald Trump again. And I can't really say who they were, because I'm under a settlement agreement, so, but that's about as far as I can go.
So you and your wife, very, very happily married to this day. Things are unfolding. Did you have a moment where you're together like, honey, this is getting pretty big here. I don't know what's about to happen.
Yeah, I mean, for years, my wife was worried about it becoming public because the kids would find out about what happened many years before. But it was, when the financial accusations came along, I never really was worried about going to jail, because I knew that I'd been so careful and checked with the lawyers before I did everything all those years, just because that was the way I was trained and brought up. And like I said, I'd been in that glass house my whole life, so I knew what would happen if they got the chance. So that's but my wife and I were just we went from here to here like overnight. And
tell us about that. That's what I want to dig into a little bit more. Like, what did it feel? You guys were a power couple up here, and really respected, everyone looked up to, and then all of a sudden, boom, the news hits about the pool boy, the affair, and then of course there was allegations of you watching. Like, what did that feel like to all of a sudden be, just boom, overnight? Like, what did you feel in your heart, and how did you guys deal with that?
Well, I knew he was lying. I knew he was desperate for money, so I knew what his motivations were. But it really, it was a shocker. And this is going to sound strange, because it's not what you're expecting me to say. But all those years at Liberty, going through all those financial difficulties and finally getting the ship turned around, getting it prosperous, it was such a stressful time, because there was no certainty. My blood pressure was running probably 170s, in the 170s over the 174 over 118 is the number I remember. And I was on blood pressure medicine. Well, now being away from Liberty a few years and having been able to clear the air on everything, my blood pressure is 100 over 60 with no medicine. So it was terrible to have it all happen that way. But I've got time now to spend with my grandkids and to reconnect with a lot of friends that I've had to ignore for decades because I've been so busy, and it's just wonderful. I mean, we live on a farm. We got 6 grandkids that all of them live close by. 3 kids, they're over here all the time. I was telling your husband, I built a lake here in 1991, 14-acre lake, and took 3 years to fill up. And the kids grew up riding jet skis and water skiing on it, and got 500 acres with trails for 4-wheelers. And I never golfed or anything like that. I never had the patience for it. So I guess we could be considered rednecks. I don't know what you call it down in Miami, but that's the way my kids grew up, and I'm loving life right now.
Yeah, so I saw in an interview you said you felt like you could finally breathe when it was all over. Yes. So I guess maybe there was a silver lining in all of this, where it really forced you into retirement, maybe?
Yes, it really was. And the only thing that worries me is that people that run the school in the future don't really understand. I'm worried that they might not understand what it was really intended to be, but that's another subject for another day. But
you brought up something interesting that I've experienced as well. I know Lila's completely wired differently than me, that when you go through these experiences, you sort of do an inventory of your life, like, oh, where have I been bad? Where have I been good? You know, and because I don't want them to find out the other bad stuff, but I don't have any other bad stuff, or do I? You know, and you get a little crazy thinking about it, and your thoughts first went to financial impropriety, like, do I have any financial impropriety? Because then this is sexual titillation thing. Sure, that's one thing, but financial impropriety, that's a whole other thing, and I don't want to go to prison, you know. So that's kind of like where your mind went.
Yeah, and like I said, it would have been torture, and I would have been up all night every night if I hadn't have known in my head that I hadn't done anything wrong. I just went out of my way. When my COO, when he left, he joked that when they heard some of these accusations, he said, "Are you kidding?" He said, "Jerry wouldn't do anything without calling a lawyer first." And so it was. It just blew my mind that I was being accused of the very things that I'd avoided, and that the people who were accusing were guilty of, or the people that were accusing just had an ulterior motive and just hated the fact that I was supporting somebody named Donald Trump. I mean, I never liked the. I just think Republicans and Democrats, professional politicians on both sides, have failed this country for so many decades, and it's just such a breath of fresh air to see somebody who's been in the real world like you guys, and like I said, have done well in business, have made their way, running the country. It's just you don't get common sense if you don't have that. I don't believe.
If you could go back in time, do you regret, or do you wish you wouldn't have stood up in front of the stage and announced your support for Donald Trump? If you could go back in time, would you do it again, or would you do it differently?
Well, my father really pretty much, his whole organization was just surging up until 1980 when he endorsed Ronald Reagan. And he started getting all this national press, and he was given credit for electing Ronald Reagan and several Republican senators out in the Midwest. And after that, everything changed. He was really enjoying what he did before that. But after that, a different group of people started coming in and being attracted here. The same thing happened with me. The school was prospering like never before since I took over in 2007. And but when I saw the direction the country was going, just like my father, he basically gave up a lot of his success to support Ronald Reagan and to get involved in politics. And I did too, but if Hillary Clinton and Biden would have been, if those type of people had been in office from then till now, I don't think that a Christian school like Liberty University would exist anyway.
Yeah.
I think they'd find some way to destroy it. And so I had no choice. I had to go in for my country's sake. I love my country. Like I said, everybody talks about everybody in America is an immigrant. Well, my family's not immigrants. We were here before this was America. We were here when it was part of England. And so it's, anyway, that's.
So you alluded to it before, that this incident, this mistake that your wife made was back in 2012, and it had passed. Time had passed. Did you ever have conversations with your wife, like, that whole thing? I hope this thing is never exposed, because that wouldn't be particularly good for us.
For the kids, yeah, absolutely, for the kids. I didn't worry about it affecting my career any, because I hadn't done anything. I mean, the only things that he was saying about me were all lies anyway. So, and their argument was that he was trying to extort money, but he never. I mean, that's not the way it went down. It was all like I said it was, and so that's. I hope I answered your question.
Yeah, I mean, no. Like, nobody's perfect. Everybody has stuff in their background. Everybody has stuff that they don't want to be known. As the president of a school, much less Liberty University, which is perhaps holds itself to a higher moral standard than other schools, do you think that? This is your, and your wife did not have an operating role within the university at all.
No.
Right? Do you think that that the people who run the school and their unaffiliated spouses should be held to a higher standard?
Well, they never have anywhere else. I think it was just unique here because there was just so many lies being told. I think even among my supporters, I think a lot of them just assumed it was true because I wasn't fighting back. I couldn't. And, my dad had a funny thing. I don't want to sound too self-righteous when I said earlier that I wasn't guilty of any things I was accused of. My dad had a funny saying about that. He used to say in the pulpit, in church, he'd tell people, he'd say, when people are saying bad things about you, when people are lying about you, don't get mad, he said, because just be happy that they don't know the truth. And so that's sort of something I always thought in my mind, because Jesus said, it's if you've lusted after a woman, it's the same as committing adultery. And so it's what's in your mind that makes us all sinners. It's not whether you did this thing or that thing on that day, but that's a theological thing.
And what role did forgiveness play in all of this for yourself, for others? Like, how did you go through that process?
Well, the people here locally, the Liberty University community, the local people, we're all 100% supportive. Like I said, I've been here my whole life, and probably for that reason. And it was that was a big help, because the rest of the country was not so supportive, and it was it was just a bunch of junk had been put out there, and they didn't know much about us or this place or anything. And so it's that's
and it seems like you went through this big media storm at the same time, while you also had to forgive your wife, because at the end of the day.
But that had happened years earlier.
Okay, so that was like a long time. Yeah. When did that one where did that start?
I had forgiven her back in 2012. I mean, it was a long time.
So that was over, and then it was almost like basically having to go through the journey again, right? Now in front of the public.
Yeah, absolutely. It was so hard on my wife. It was terrible. I felt so bad for her. And
how did she handle it? How did she deal with it? Because it was it was almost like being hit twice for the same crime, punished twice for the same crime, right?
Well, well.
Because then
there was nothing publicized back in 2012. 2020.
What I'm saying is she had to deal with it with you, right?
Personally, right.
But then, and then it's over. We move on, right? Because
right.
But then she had to go through it again in front of the world. So like,
you're 100%.
How did you guys get through that?
You're 100% correct. Oh, it was gut wrenching. It was terrible. It was. We didn't know what was going to happen. We didn't know if. First of all, we didn't know if I was going to die, but we also didn't know if we were going to lose everything we had. If I was going to get the retirement that was owed to me by the school, which I spent my whole life earning. And it was very, very difficult. And I'm just so proud of my kids and my wife for handling it so well. I mean, I got a wonderful wife, and she's just taken such great care of me since day one. And, to see her have to go through all that was terrible. It's just, nobody should have that kind of thing, those kind of lies told about you in the press. And, it was tough. And the kids too. I'm not doing a very good well of describing how hard it was, but it was extremely hard.
How many kids do you have?
Three.
How old were they at the time? Were they adults?
Yes. Let's see. They were born in 1989, 1993, and 2000. So yeah, they were all adults. The youngest one was 20.
Did you break the news to them, or they heard about it elsewhere?
No, we told them. We told them ahead of time, and they were 100% supportive of her and me, and that was a big relief for both of us.
I can imagine.
Mm-hmm. And was there ever a moment that you felt like your family was, wobbly because of
vacillating?
Yeah, just like, because sometimes
telling us they support us, but
sometimes kids get like, why did you brought this on us? What?
Yeah, well, they didn't have that reaction, surprisingly, and they it really cost them a lot, because they were one of my sons, the oldest one, Trey. He had worked his way up in the university, worked for Randy Smith, my COO at the time, and he was running several departments. He was doing a great job, and I think he was fired for no reason other than he was related to me. And it's just sad that things like that happen, but they do. My other son was, he's totally different. He likes to work with his hands. He was running a metal fabrication shop for the university for 10 years. And he just left because the atmosphere, and they didn't treat him very well after I left. And so he moved on. And my youngest daughter was in college, and she graduated in 2022. And we were allowed on campus just to go to her graduation, but they put us in a secluded room way far away from the stage, and they had police guarding the door. And I mean, it was laughable. It really was.
Wow.
But you know,
That must have been crazy, though. This is the school your father founded, and you took from almost going under to where it's at.
right.
You know, to not be able to step foot or have a security guarding it. I mean, that must have been heartbreaking.
Yeah. You know, like I said, there's not a whole lot I can say about that, but there were some hidden agendas, put it that way.
So you're all this attention, negative attention, and you're feeling like crap also physically.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, part of you maybe wants to crawl up in a ball. You know,
Yeah.
How did you how did you find the strength to carry on, for you to be the patriarch and be that fearless leader? And
It wasn't easy, but I was so sick with that low oxygen that you know, I pretty much did curl up in a ball. I mean, I gained like I couldn't move around much, so I just ate all the time. I weighed like 200 before, and I ended up at 270, and you know, now I'm back down below my normal weight. But I just can't describe to people unless you've been there, unless you've had low oxygen levels for a long period of time. You don't understand how bad it is. I mean, doctors didn't even know people could survive oxygen levels in the 70s, which I was, before COVID came along. During COVID, some of them did. And that's the first time doctors knew that people could even survive that.
Now, did you turn to God through all this for
Well, yeah,
support?
I was.
How did your faith come in to give you the support that you needed?
Well, that started in college because I grew up in the my dad had a K through 12, so I went to that school, and I went to Sunday school. I remember some of the first things I was taught in Sunday school at my dad's church were, it doesn't matter how often you go to church, or how often you read your Bible, or how often you pray, and whether you drink or not, or whether you go to a dance or not, or go to a movie, or those were some of the things that were against the rules. None of that matters. What matters is either you believe or you don't. You're either a believer or you're not, and you either treat others like you want to be treated or you don't. And that was what I always thought. But as I grew up, I saw a lot of people were religious people, but they really weren't Christians. I mean, they didn't treat people well. Not my father. He was always the exception. But there were a lot of people who just were always pointing out all these little nitpicky things, like I just listed them, and saying, oh, you're telling kids you're bad because you did this, or you went to that dance, or you had a beer, or whatever it was. And so I grew up thinking, because of those religious people who are always, they call it legalism. So when they have rules that didn't come from Jesus or the Bible, they just are rules that they made up. So they can, if you break them, they can exercise authority over you. That's what he was talking about when he condemned the Pharisees in the Gospels. But anyway, I'd grown up around all that. But when I was in college, I didn't play sports. I didn't have a job. So I figured I might as well make good grades. You know, I might as well accomplish something while I'm here. So I made good grades, and that's why I got in law school. But one of the things I did was I studied the Gospels of Jesus Christ. And when I read through what Jesus said in the red letters, I was just shocked. I was like, Jesus is condemning these very religious people that have been condemning me my whole life. And, you know, my dad didn't like these legalistic people either in his school. He would complain about them. Sometimes he'd fire them. But that's just, when you started a Christian school, those are the kind of people that came to work. And so, but they made us feel terrible. But when I read, Jesus said, woe unto you scribes and Pharisees, for you make clean the outside of the platter, but inside you're ravenous wolves. And he said, don't pray. When you pray, don't pray in the streets like the hypocrites do to be seen of men. Pray in your closet, and I'll see you privately, and I'll reward you openly. Jesus was not, he never taught that we're supposed to wear a religion on our sleeve, or that we're supposed to judge other people who don't live by a certain set of rules. And so once I realized that, then I was secure in what I believed from then on. It was just, I knew that religion's great. It's a great way to help people, but it's nothing to do with your actual spiritual faith. It's nothing to do with Christianity. And so that's very surprising, probably coming from somebody who's an evangelical leader, but I really believe that. I believe it's what Jesus said. Of course, he got crucified for saying it, so maybe I shouldn't go around saying it too much. But anyways.
So during everything, did you double down on your faith, or you're steadfast? It was unwavering.
I just took comfort in those words of Jesus, because I knew the people who were torturing me were the very people that he condemned the most when he was on earth. The same exact religious elite, not the regular common people. They're at liberty, the regular folks, the students, the supporters, the alumni. They're all wonderful people, but they're just like with any other organization. There's always, and there were at Liberty and LCA, there were people who were just they weren't full of love. They were full of judgment, and that's not Christianity.
No.
So back to the pool boy for a moment. So this guy has been all over ABC, NBC, Good Morning America, saying a lot of stuff. Sounds like he's got compensated in multiple different ways. Is there anything
Allegedly.
that he's what's that?
You have to say
Allegedly, yes.
Yeah.
Is there anything that you would like to set the record straight on, just something that's like just outright like not true at all that he's going around?
Well, my wife
spouting?
went through that. My wife went through that book that he wrote. I don't know if he wrote it or not, but she filled up a whole notebook. She wrote down all the lies that were in the book, and so she filled up a whole notebook of lies. And so, the truth is just what I told you. There was no financial impropriety at all, ever. Even when I did real estate development, if I had to buy a piece of property from a nonprofit, I would make sure that I got an appraisal and paid fair market value for it, so nobody could ever say I took advantage of a nonprofit that my father started or whatever. But I hope I answered your question.
What kind of advice would you give someone else that's being canceled right now? What gems could you give based on your experience, based on what you went through, how you got through it? What are the things that helped you the most, that if somebody else out there is listening that's going through this, could be helpful to them?
It really doesn't matter what anybody else says or thinks about you. You have to be secure in your own self and your own faith, and you have to be a confident person. And you can't control what other people are going to say, and so I really don't think you should let it bother you. I think my approach the whole time was to fight to prove the truth and to get the truth out there. So I focused on that, on something positive. For me, it was doing something positive instead of just sitting around saying, poor me. I don't think. And you got to remember the things that when somebody's trying to cancel you and they're saying terrible things about you, the general public doesn't really care. They don't pay much attention to it. I mean, it means a whole lot to you or me when we get attacked because it's us they're talking about. But you have to remember that the average person is worried about making a living and taking care of their family and keeping their jobs. Yeah.
It's so true what you're saying, because we've experienced the same thing. First of all, this lady she's built different than the rest of us. She doesn't care all that much what people say. Although she is a very experienced person in her own.
I did give him that same advice, though. By the way, who
Mm-hmm.
cares about what they say?
I know.
Screw them.
I know. It's one thing to be told that, to be okay, to truly not be impacted. But I think maybe it's our generation who we grew up to care about what people think about us. Mm-hmm. And I have a theory, which I haven't shared with you, that young people in the world of social media, it kind of goes with the territory of likes and thumbs down and all that. There's some percentage of the population that's not going to like you or your stuff or what you stand for or even hate on you. And I think young people maybe have a benefit over us, as they are not as impacted.
Like thicker skin. Because it's become part of the normal course of their day. Somebody likes them, doesn't like them, says something mean, doesn't say something
mean. They roll with it a lot easier than maybe we do. And we got there the hard way. I'm I think I'm there. I don't want this to happen. I don't want to be canceled yet again. But I think that if it were to happen, I'd have a lot thicker skin. I'd be able to navigate my way through it a lot easier. You know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and my thinking is, especially with the media, what is it their business? Go mind your own business. Like, you know what? All of a sudden, we're nationwide news because we don't want teachers to get the COVID shot. Why is that nationwide news? Go live your life, let us live ours,
Yeah, but just remember, they're not coming after you because of something you did. They're coming after you because it serves their agenda. It serves a purpose for them to make an example out of somebody who's not forcing their students to get the COVID shot. That should be everybody's own decision to make, not the schools. I think you did the right thing.
Thank you.
But it's a lot. I tell my wife all the time. She reads all this stuff on the internet in the past, and it's bad. And I said, Becky, the only reason they're attacking me is because they don't like my politics. So don't let it bother you. That's one thing I told myself that's how I dealt with it all. Is if I had never endorsed Donald Trump, they wouldn't be coming after me.
Yeah,
so
that's true.
It's also a backhanded compliment. They do these things because it gets an audience, it gets eyeballs, and so in a way they think that you're worthy of, you can help them.
Very true.
That cause,
Very true. Oh, and I've heard my dad. Well, I shouldn't keep quoting him, but he was a firm believer there was no such thing as bad publicity. So it's
that's what you used to say that.
I didn't make it up.
No, but we are seeing a common theme, though. There is a common theme of successful Trump supporters that they truly try to take down. I think had we been mega donors for Biden, they would have never come after us.
No, they would not have. They would not have.
And it's like, it's this theme because they don't want that group to become bigger and stronger. And so their motive is to basically slap you down. I mean, look, how many people in the world commit fidelity? It happens. People make mistakes. You know what I mean? Does that mean you need to hammer them to the cross and make this big public spectacle out of it? It's none of their business. That's your personal life. Stuff happens. There's many relationships that they all have personal stuff going on. It's not the world's business.
Yep. You're right. 100%.
For you to deal with privately, for you to focus on, but because they have an ulterior motive, because they probably realized you were a big part in helping him get elected in 2016, and they did not want that to happen in 2020.
Right.
Which is why it sounded like a lot of this stuff came out in 2020. It all came out. It all came out in 2020. It was like a perfect storm for us. It's like I got sick at the same time that he went public, and some other things happened, and my wife's family, nothing to do with her, but that she found out about at the same time, and it was like the whole world just kind of came in on us at once. And so but it was everything happens for a reason. I really believe that, and I think that a lot of good is going to come from what happened. Go ahead. Just a quick one. What do you feel the good is going to come from this? Have you already seen, besides the fact that now you can spend time with your family and your grandkids, and you're more available to them and accessible? What else do you think can come out of this?
I really would like to. I'd like to write a book about everything I've experienced, and I'd really like to help a lot of evangelicals understand the difference between what Jesus taught and what is religion, because I think a lot of them they get into a religion and they do all the things that they're told they're supposed to do, and they think that somehow that makes them a good Christian, or makes them, I don't know, but that's not what Jesus said. And so it's just so, I can say things like that now. I probably couldn't before, because there are certain religious people that didn't want to hear that, but it's a fact, and I believe it.
So these people that tried to hurt you and your family, at least for me, I was able to find compassion for them. Have you gotten to that point? From anger or shame to compassion?
I don't know I don't know that I ever got mad, except when they mistreated my kids. That was the time and my wife. That's when I got mad. But most of the time, it was just okay, if they want to play that way, then I'm going to have to. I mean, I'm a lawyer, so I think that way. I'll have to do this and this. And so I played hardball, and it worked out well.
Where are you now emotionally toward these people that were trying to hurt you?
Like I said, it's a small minority of people, and I can't even say who they were. I'm not. Contract doesn't allow me to say that, but and I never will. I don't want to disparage anybody at Liberty. I really do think they have a good president now, and I think it's a lot of the things that happened in the first 3 years after I left. I think they've been corrected, and I'm optimistic about it, and I'm offered to help any way I can. So,
are you allowed? I know your settlement was resolved. Are you allowed back on campus?
Yeah,
Is
it was set. Yeah, the fans, the alumni, and the students gave us an incredible welcome back last fall. I went to several games and just spent time getting pictures with students, and just they were loving on us big time. And then same thing with basketball, and same thing with basketball games, and same thing with some other CEO. They have CEO summits where they bring in a lot of CEOs to speak to the students, and attended one of those. And so yeah, I mean, there's no hard feelings with anybody over there. It's it's water over the dam at this point, but it is I'm glad you're covering this topic in this podcast, and I congratulate you for starting it, because it wasn't like this when I was in law school. And back in the 80s, if people disagreed, they would each argue their points and respectfully. And Alan Dershowitz was a good friend. He was on your show recently, I saw, and he spoke at Liberty. I had a lot of big, really famous, well-known people come speak at Liberty when I was there. And so that was part of the goal for Liberty, is to have speakers that have done well in every walk of life come and share with the students how they accomplished what they accomplished. And so that's that universe, that sort of atmosphere for students, where they get to hear from the best of the best. And Steph Curry came, and we had in front of all these students, we did a shootout. I made a shot, he didn't. And but that's not because I'm a basketball player. It's just blind luck. And things like that. We had race car drivers, NASCAR drivers come in, and we raced against them on little go-karts. And I mean, when I was there, we just had a lot of fun. Students loved it, and it's I hope it stays like that.
Well, I definitely love to come visit you, because maybe it's an opportunity for it to become a feeder school. We just opened 10th grade. Next year we'll open 11th and then 12th. So we have 2 more years before we have kids graduating from high school. But we're very aligned in terms of our values. I mean, our school is, the silver lining to what happened to us is our community became stronger. All the people who thought we were crazy, or they were pretty adamant that people should be forced to mask, forced to vaccine. They all left. Way more aligned people came in. So we have a good school of people that are spiritual, or they're Christians, or they're Jews, or they're just the different religions, that we just all welcome each other, because it's about love. At the end of the day, it's all about love.
Yeah.
It's not about judgment. It's not about hate. It's not about anger. It's all about love.
You're totally right. And it's interesting. Some of the people who supported us the most after all that happened were our Jewish friends in New York. Our PR guy, lawyers, or others doctors that are friends of ours. They just came out of the woodwork and just went out of their way. They just thought it was wrong what was happening, and they just came to our defense in a big way. And
maybe we should have Layla come to campus and speak to the student body.
Love to have you up. We'd love to have you up, and I'm allowed to go on campus, so I can give you a tour.
Yeah, I would love that. Let's coordinate that. Alex, we have his cell phone number, right?
Yes.
Okay, great.
So why don't we'll call it a bonus round. We want to throw a couple of questions at you and just answer them in a sentence or so. Why don't we take turns? Okay. So what hurt the most in all this entire experience?
What hurt the most was wondering what was going to happen if it became public, that what happened years before with the kids, wondering how they take it. Because our family's really close. We travel together a lot, and And that was probably the worst part, because once it all happened, it's like, okay, the worst that could happen has happened, and it's not so bad. So I don't know. I hope that answered your question.
Sure. Yeah. There's no wrong answer here.
And what healed the most?
What healed the most?
What healed the most? Yeah.
Just working hard and pointing out the truth. I mean, it was like playing chess. It was like putting together this massive puzzle, because so many lies have been told, and so many people had treated us badly, that I had to figure out what the motives were. And anyway, that was the way I did something positive to deal with it, was to work hard to correct it, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
When did you first get that taste of inner peace? Like, you know what, I'm going to be okay. It's all going to be okay.
I think when everything settled last summer in July. Yeah.
The litigation.
Yeah.
Was wrapped up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I had not neglected, but I had stopped developing real estate when I became president of Liberty, and so I had foregone a lot of income that I would have had, and so I'd put all my life in that place in so many ways, and I needed that retirement to take care of the family afterwards, because I neglected so many other things that would have helped them. Mm-hmm. And that was the other thing too, that I realized after it happened. It makes you, when you get away from the rat race and from the stress and all, it makes you think back of, like, oh wow, I was so busy, I ignored this kid or that kid, my kids too much, or I should have given them more attention or my wife, I should have given her more attention during those years. I was so busy. I mean, I was so consumed with that place. I don't know how to tell you. We had 10,000 employees, and like I said, we were coming up from nowhere to building something huge, and it's always just meetings constantly with architects and with students, and always some event to attend. And but then I finally got away, and I'm so glad I did, because now I'm able to give my kids, my wife, the attention they deserve, and like I said, get to know a lot of people. I mean, reacquaint myself with a lot of people that were good friends in the past, and like I said, I'm loving life.
You're living now.
Yes.
You're living life. You're living and loving.
Yeah.
So my question is one word to describe where you are now, but it sounds like you got the word. You're living and loving life.
You're right. That's great.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Jerry Falwell Jr., thank you so much. You've been a really great guest. I'm always surprised that there really is another side to the story with everybody that you just don't get to hear, and it really just gives me confirmation that our show is awesome. This podcast is great. I think it's really important. Thank you for coming on. Thank you for...
And just to add to that, it's like, this has to be a venue and an avenue for people to share their side, because otherwise the just bombardment of what the media does, blitz, 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 it doesn't even give a person an opportunity to hear the other side and then decide. It's just, you're hearing one side, and that's not the way media should be.
Yeah, I agree.
It's just so wrong, and I hope that this show makes a difference and really gets people to before they judge so fast.
Yeah.
Think that there is another side, and it's painful to go through this. So before people out there rush and jump to make judgment on what somebody is going through in their life, think about it, because that cancellation, it hurts. Have you seen from some of the other episodes we have, it causes a lot of financial destruction. It causes health issues. It causes a lot of damage, and some people, have committed suicide, you name it. So, my wish, my hope for viewers out there is, don't jump on the cancellation bandwagon. You don't need to. If somebody's got something private going on in their business, leave them alone. We all have stuff. Let them go through this journey without the world coming after them. Leave them alone. Don't jump on that bandwagon.
Well, I think your message is so badly needed right now, and I can just sit here. I can think of other people, like Michael Flynn. You remember him?
Yes, we know
Michael Flynn.
Yes.
He was another one that got badly mistreated, just because he was affiliated with Trump. And I know the list is it's long, but that's just one that came to mind.
If you've
And,
got
know what?
any associates, colleagues,
If you want to connect us with Michael Flynn, I've met him a few times because I've
Yeah.
spoken in the arenas with him.
yeah,
He's
yeah.
a great guy. If you can
I've
connect us
met-
with him,
I met a lot. I know a lot of the people that were canceled in the Trump world. Steve Bannon's a good friend, and the one you just mentioned, I know pretty well. And
Yeah.
there's others. I can't. They don't come to my mind right. Sitting here.
if you want to connect us with anyone that you think would be great for this show, we would love to have them on.
I'll work on it. I will for sure.
And it was fantastic having you on, and I'm going to take you up on visiting your school. I can't wait to see it.
I
Thank you
can't
for
wait.
your time.
Can't wait
Thanks
to
for-
see you guys. Too.
Thanks for your
Thank you so much.
vulnerability and your transparency and your honesty.
Oh, I do have one question. Does Turning Point have an activation at your school? Turning
Yeah,
Point?
Charlie Kirk and I started. We called it the Falkirk Center. FAL for Falwell and KIRK for his name. And it was he had a lot of influencers, young people who have lots of social media followers, and who are advocating for conservative causes, and I guess for Trump too. And we were they had I'm trying to remember. I think we paid for. Liberty actually covered some of the costs of those influencers putting the word out, because it helped us recruit students too. So we saw it as a student recruitment expense, because we want to recruit the type of students that are following his organization. And so he worked with us closely for a long time, and he's doing a great work.
So Mr. Jerry Falwell Jr., thank you for your time. Thank you for your vulnerability and your transparency and your honesty. Thank you for sharing your side of the story. Thank you for appreciating what we're doing, and we wish you all the continued love and happiness with you and your family as you get back to the things that are really important in life.
Yes,
Thank you. I'm honored to be a part of this, and I think it's wonderful what you're doing. Congratulations.
And maybe you want to do a podcast based on your new mission that you mentioned earlier.
I've actually been thinking about it, but I've never watched a podcast before yesterday. I watched your couple of yours.
Okay.
That's the first time I'm 62, so I'll be 63 next month, so I don't know much about podcasts like my daughter does. But
This guy right here is 59, so you're not much older.
Okay. You look great. You look
Thank you,
great.
buddy. Appreciate it.
Okay.
Thank you
so much.
Have a good
Good to
day.
meet you guys.
All right.
You too.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.